You've landed on The Substance, a podcast aimed at being biblical, thoughtful, and human. Join us every other week as we engage the culture without the culture war. I'm your host, Trevor Aiken, joined here by my friends and co-hosts, Vincent Edwards.
What's going on?
And Philip Marinello.
Hey, everybody.
What is going on, yo?
Really glad to be here for our first topic toss-up since April of this year.
Man,
a minute.
it has been a minute.
When we were ramping up to 100, we had so many things we wanted to do, and then we went bi-weekly, and we just haven't recorded. No, we did scrap one. BTS, I forgot about that. We did scrap one of the topic toss-ups that we wanted to re-record, and we just kept getting cool guests and timely things, and we never re-record. So that's why it's been since April.
Yeah, exactly. It's my fault, really.
Figuring that out in real time for jacking it up or being a perfectionist.
You know, we're just this is just we're inviting you into the process.
I agree. I think that we definitely had some good content on there, but if we're trying to go for evergreen content on The Substance, I think that was the right choice to put that one in the draft file.
Yeah.
I wonder, for the listener out there who's like, wait, if you scrap stuff, then how does this make it? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. So what is this y'all are listening to? The Substance is a Christian variety show. Every other week, we talk for about an hour about something related to Christianity, culture, the arts. There's movies. There's all sorts of stuff. It's a variety show. It's fun. Sometimes we have great guests like Jamar Tisby, Robert P. Jones, Justin Giboney, or Bradley Mason. All episodes in the catalog on the off weeks. You should go back, listen to again. Other times, we just chop it up among ourselves, like today. It's fun. At the end, we share some shout-outs of things we've been finding enjoyable or edifying. Substance shout-outs, our segment there. And you can find out some cool stuff to go read or watch or listen to or whatever.
Cool stuff. That's the cool stuff segment.
It's a cool stuff segment. And we're going to call it that. Never.
Or we'll work on some segments. Maybe we should. I love podcasts with segments, but it's always like awkward when you see a podcast trying to force a segment when it doesn't occur naturally. So maybe in 50 episodes from now we'll have more segments. But
my favorite podcast segment is probably Munch Squad.
That's a very good segment.
Podcast within a podcast. I'm very thankful for it.
For Munch Squad?
Yeah, it's great.
Nice.
It's a good thing. So I know we're not in the season around Thanksgiving or whatever when people are typically talking about thankfulness when you hear all the sermons and stuff trotted out. But I've just been thinking recently.
Is funny. That is kind of like the main time where you hear sermons about it. Like it's very much a pervasive topic,
which is wild.
The Bible, and you kind of do mostly hear about it at Thanksgiving. Not that you don't hear about it at all, but that's like you better be preaching about thankfulness at least one of those Sundays.
Yeah. And it's something that, what I've been thinking about recently and just don't know if people are aware as well, is like, it's something that's very central to Paul's philosophy on the Christian life.
Yeah, no, it's pretty pervasive in there.
Yeah. And in this way too, thinking about thankfulness in this way, it could almost be an addendum to our cursing episode in a way.
Sure. Do not let any unwholesome speech but thankfulness.
Yeah. So like looking at specifically, like Philip was quoting there, Ephesians chapter 5.
Philip was butchering there. Sorry.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say attempt too hard. Verse 4, let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving. So it's something that's supposed to be the replacement. And what's interesting is there's a lot of other stuff he could have chose there, right? He could have said, let there be praise, let there be encouragement, let there be exhortation, let there be whatever, but instead he goes with thanksgiving.
Well, if we're going to do an addendum and tie this to the cursing episode, what if, I doubt Prop is listening, but the people who are kind of on his lane, like what if that thankfulness is filled with expletives?
Well, then that would militate against the contrast of Ephesians 5:4.
Okay, word. I don't disagree.
What's interesting too is thinking through, like, with thankfulness in particular. One of the interesting things about it is at the majority of all mentions of thankfulness of that entire word group in the New Testament happens in Paul's writings. So it's like a specific accent of his ministry and his thinking. And what's interesting too is thinking about the way that he links it cosmically, like in Ephesians 5:4, he says certain kind of speech, like the cursing Philip was just mentioning, are out of place for a believer, but instead it needs to be replaced with thanksgiving. Another interesting text is Romans chapter 1, where he talks about the lack of thanksgiving being characteristic of an evil life or an unbelieving life. He says, although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him. So, like, what does it mean to honor God as God? In Paul's mind, is very closely tied to giving thanks to him.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we've talked about that concept a lot in our shows, especially in regards to like the love of neighbor and like the Christian life, how the Christian life is one of, and not materially, but like our inner life and our testimony like should be one of joy and like goodness towards others and the common good. And a lot of that, and we don't always necessarily call it out explicitly, but like that comes from the thankfulness. Like that's Romans 1. Like when we have experienced the grace and goodness of God, both cosmically and salvifically, but like just going through life with the lens of seeing God at work, that does produce thankfulness. And then that thankfulness is a lot of the fuel for all those other works.
Yeah. What you're saying there too is very similar to what Paul's saying in 2 Corinthians 4, where he's talking about his ministry to the Corinthians and says, it's all for your sake, so that as grace extends to more and more people, it may increase thanksgiving to the glory of God. So, like, it's almost as if he also sees thanksgiving and thankfulness as an end of his ministry.
He wants to produce thankfulness. Like he
Yeah.
will consider his ministry successful not only if people are living righteously, but if they are like characterized by thankfulness.
In reform circles, it's often talked about how, like, the ultimate end of things is the glory of God. But for Paul, like in that verse, the step right before that is thankfulness.
Well, and
People's
that's
thankfulness expressed to God.
and really when you think about like glorifying God, like he is the object of our gratitude and thankfulness. Like we glorify him by seeing him and proclaiming him as the one who is worthy of our thankfulness.
Exactly. And that bears out, like, in the scripture a lot of times. In fact, the majority of the time, God is directly the object of thankfulness when it's mentioned there. I wonder how much in Christian circles we recognize this and we live this out. Because if thankfulness is supposed to be the overall attitude and kind of like breath of our life, like the speech characteristic according to Ephesians 5, right? Also, if you look at Colossians, he talks about whatever you do in word or deed, do everything to the name of the Lord Jesus, what? Giving thanks to God the Father through him. So literally that text that a lot of people use to say, hey, do everything for the glory of God, at the same time, of very close parallel is do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God through him. It's supposed to be a byproduct of letting the word of Christ dwell in you richly. So if that's supposed to be it, then, like, is that how we actually talk?
So would you say that in order to be faithful, one has to be thankful first?
Yeah, I would say in Paul's mind,
You said thankful first. Is that a specific designation, Vince?
So it's
Like
more saying,
preceding your goodness, like your
right,
status is
it's
thankful.
more of a person, because in my mind I'm thinking the motivation to be faithful is a byproduct of what Christ has done. But for what Christ has done, I am thankful for that, the sacrifice that the Lord has provided. And so because of that, that breeds love, that breeds faithfulness, that breeds seeking to walk rightly before God, not because of necessarily fear of, hell or damnation or trying to earn salvation, more than it is I'm thankful for what he's done, and so I seek to be faithful.
Yeah, I think all of that is what you described there is an accurate description of it. I would say we can't be faithful without being thankful,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and
Well,
without
just
that
like
being
any of
a
the other
regular.
things. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just like anything else. But I think particularly, I think about how this shows up in the way that we act. Like, how does this show up in the way that if we're a believer, we treat the customer service person for Spectrum or Comcast or whatever that you're talking to?
Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
how does it impact the way you treat your waiter? How does it impact the way you treat the guy who gets your fast food order wrong?
Well, what would you say to a person who says, "Okay, let's say Comcast, I'm receiving bad service
Hmm.
from this rep." And so me screaming at him or, just getting snippy or sassy or whatever doesn't mean I'm not thankful to God. It's I'm not thankful of his bad service, his or her bad service. What would you say to that person?
I think there's an attitude of thanksgiving that can exist in all circumstances. 1 Thessalonians 5:18 says, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you." So, like,
Mhm.
I think that there is ways that even when things are going wrong in that, representing bad service or things like that, we can still find ways to be thankful for them. We can still find things to be thankful about. What Paul is saying is it's the natural disposition of the heart that's received the blessing of God to see that, to see his grace in things, to see it and respond to it in thankfulness.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like a lot of the fruit of the spirit. You're not like, I am gonna be patient in order to like show that I'm following Jesus. It's like it
Mm.
kind of it goes together. Like as we mature and as we focus and grow in those things, like a growing Christian will necessarily be manifesting thankfulness.
So if a person is a Christian or has professed Christ for several years, they're hearing this and they're like, "Man, I know I love the Lord, but if what you guys are talking about should be the standard or at least the expectation from one who is a believer, and I assess my life and I don't do that, how would you counsel that person as they assess their walk with God?"
I'd want to know, like, is the joy and of the thankfulness in your heart, but you're just not expressing it? Are you missing it? Is there something else that you're seeing, like, rather than seeing everything that you have to give thanks for? Yeah, I would just want to know more about the mentality and like what is driving their thoughts, what is driving their speech to others throughout the day. Do the people closest to them know that they're thankful?
Mm,
Does their wife, their husband, their kids know that they're thankful for them? Do they express that, regularly?
Well, and it's not
mm,
there's not like one uniform expression of thankfulness either. Like
mhm.
Sure.
you can, depending on your circumstances, like you said, you can be displeased with receiving bad service or something bad and like show upset. It's not like thank you God for this terrible thing. Like
I-
No,
that's
it's not.
not
I'm talking about that. Yeah.
that's not it. Like Jesus in the temple wasn't like, God, thank you that these men are like trying to profit off of your law and your teachings. Like, no,
yeah.
he kicked him out the temple. Like, it's not like some sort of like fake disposition, like prescribe yourself like a big smile and like a couple of platitudes. And like when anybody asks you anything, like you rattle off like, oh, better than I deserve. And if you say that, that's maybe fine. But like that sort of disposition isn't necessarily a heart of thankfulness.
Yeah. So a slight curveball. So a person dealing with depression has a very hard time seeing the good or to be thankful. So they're faithful to the Lord, but with our understanding of mental health, or as that understanding grows, just say this Christian is just having a very hard time. They love Christ, but they are having a very hard time seeing the good in anything or being thankful for anything that's around them, how would you counsel that person?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. When it comes to mental health, there's a lot of different mental health things that cause struggles with a lot of different Christian virtues, right? Whether that's patience or other things as well. In
Temperance.
different cases. Yeah, temperance is a good example, Phil.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say is start small, start with something real solid. Be thankful for what Christ has done for you, right? And the forgiveness there. You can be thankful for the ability, to pray to the Lord. Like, just start small.
Like, I think that's important. Like what Trevor was kind of saying there, like having Christ being the focal point is so key. And I mean, I know Christ was absolutely exalted in the tradition in the church that I came from, but like there was a particular emphasis on ourselves in our acts, and like absolutely, like we're called to live and think a certain way. But when somebody is struggling, when somebody's having difficulty in their walk, I don't think that an increased attention and focus primarily on like their specific actions and efforts practically really is the best thing. Like if
Right.
we're trying to say, hey, like we're trying to live as Christ lived, and we're trying to think as God thinks, and to be his hands and feet in this world, I think cosmically upward focus is much better than like, okay, like I need to like practicing gratitude is good. But if you're struggling with depression, going like, I need to be grateful is probably not going to be the most helpful thing.
Yeah, it's not a good springboard for that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's not about creating a standard to beat yourself up with and hold yourself to, but just finding ways that can be true of your life in the things that Christ has done in your faith community. And if you're struggling with that, seek out a pastor, seek out people close to you who know your life, who care for you, who know your specific situation and are able to counsel you with grace, right? Not just put legal standards on you. But overall, I think that we have so much coming to us that it's just one of those things where there's so many little things where thank you is just, and even just those two words, like just thank you, can really make a difference
Yeah.
in the way that people experience the grace of Christ flowing through you.
Yeah. And this is one other thing I wanted to say about it. It's very encouraging to have this conversation, and this is something that I've been putting in practice because I know internally I hold myself to a very high standard in everything that I do. And so if I feel like I've fallen short, I don't feel like, oh, okay, well, I just didn't get that right. I should, do that better next time. It's like, no, you failed. And so if something comes to mind where it's like, all right, you're not being thankful enough, then it's very easy to kind of beat yourself up and be like, oh man, I failed at being the Christian I'm supposed to be, kind of like what you were saying, Phil. But one thing that I would say you have to have is intentionality. You have to be intentional to seek those things out, like you're saying, Trev, of what to be thankful for, what you're surrounded by. It can go to the smallest thing, like I am breathing. That is a blessing. That is a gift. All the way up to, I'm in sales and I closed $1 million deal or something, whatever. That's obviously, something to celebrate and be thankful for. But it doesn't have to be these grand gestures. It could be, I opened my eyes today, or I still have mobility in my body. Those are things to be thankful for.
Yeah, that was good, man. So next time something small or big happens, just express that thankfulness. Express thankfulness to people around you.
Yeah. I know there are some people who I think are a little too thankful. Yeah.
How is somebody too thankful?
Well, honestly, I haven't been on the socials, so I don't know how popular or
That's
unpopular
one thing to be
this is.
thankful for.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But the topic of Christian nationalism is starting to come back up, almost to a point where the language, or at least the meaning of this term, is starting to or at least being pressed to change into something that should be accepted or something that should be embraced.
Mm.
And I wanted to talk about that.
Well, they're not even necessarily redefining it. Like I said, like the shift is like they're not even necessarily redefining it. They're like, oh, that thing is good now. Like it's, oh no, we're not this. Oh, we're not this. It's like, okay, no, we are, and it's good.
Right, exactly. And that, you hit the nail on the head right there. Like we are, and this we should be. It's saying we are and we should be. And just for those who don't know, I think Christianity Today had a great definition of what Christian nationalism is, which is the belief that the American nation is defined by Christianity and that the government should take active steps to keep it that way. And I think sometimes this gets a bit confused. So if you guys were having a conversation with a person who might say that, like, yeah, I am a Christian nationalist, but maybe a misunderstanding, and they conflate that with patriotism, how would you guys make that distinction between nationalism and patriotism?
Well, ugh.
Here's one thing I would say. Like, I'm looking at this quote from this article. It's like, people are calling me a Nazi because I proudly love my country and my God. Well, the definition of Christian nationalism is not that you love God and you love your country. I'll say this. I love America and I love God, but I don't worship both.
Right.
I only worship God, because here's the thing. Like, even though I'm very thankful, see first segment, for America.
Nice.
And I'm thankful for freedoms and representative democracy and all of these things, right? I'm also not at the core committed to the fiction that America is only a shining beacon of liberty on a hill, right? Like, I embrace the several, competing realities of what a nation that professed liberty, but at the same time held people in bondage, has created for itself, right? And the complexities of that, and how those complexities continue to this day. I would say that I actually love my country more than someone who embraces a fiction, because what they love is not their country, but this
it's like an idol, like in their
bizarro,
image.
Idol of the country that is Philip, made in their own image. Typically white, to be honest.
Keep it a buck.
And so I would say that like, those are the things that are problematic about it. It's not that people love God and love their country. There's a lot of people who do that, who at the same time, even in her same quote, are called godless. Like, I'm lumped in with godless people because I would dare question that, America was anything other than this total shining beacon of freedom for all peoples.
Yeah.
So that would be my opening thing. Think about it that way.
I would probably choose not to. If somebody came up and straight up is like, I'm a Christian nationalist, and that's cool, right? I'd be like, you know what, man?
Okay.
Go with God. Let's talk about something else. Because it's like,
what if it was somebody who was like actually going to sit down and talk to you about it for a bit?
No, so that's the thing. Because like my thought internally, and I definitely have matured. I don't know if I would feel in that moment if I felt like they were open enough to it, would be different. Because I feel like that declaration culturally is not a neutral one, and it's not typically a cool, chill, open-minded, let's exchange thoughts kind of declaration. Because I mean, my mind would go back to, if we're talking in the framework of the substance here, back to our news and sources episode. Like, the folks I see, like, at the heart of the push for normalizing and accepting Christian nationalism as a good thing are not good people, are not honest people, are not Christian people. Like, I definitely see some religious figures and people who have the role of pastor, who are influenced by these political entertainers who like to stir up conflict for their personal gain, whether it be money or power. Like, there are definitely pastors who listen to those people who are getting worked up, but like the people who are at the heart of, yes, Christian nationalism, and it's good, and the onus is on you to explain why that's not a good thing. Like, those are not good people. But like, if I came across an average person who's like, hey, help me understand, like, I'm a Christian, I love my country, like, what's all this? Like, if they're far removed from like the intense culture war, then yeah, I'd engage. And I mean, I don't know
Try to get
exactly where I'd go first.
Yeah. One of the biggest issues I have on why this is, I would say, serious issue, is Christian nationalism, even religious nationalism, has a cultural template. And it's basically saying people need to conform to this template. And there are people who won't, or people who can't conform to that template. And so it goes back to our Good Samaritan episode. It is the prime fuel to choose who my neighbor is. It is a perfect setup to otherize individuals who don't fall into what you believe the culture and the nation should be.
Well, that's even just within this country, right? Like you were saying, like an American Christian nationalist, but like my mind also goes to like, well, okay, like we're one country in this whole big world. What about the Christians in all these other countries? Like you marrying your love of America to Christianity, you can love America and be a Christian. That's cool and fine.
100%.
But if like your identity in those mix, then like, what about Christians in Canada or Mexico or France or Australia? They're not that. Like, you're marrying two things. You're putting the things on the level that like those things don't go together.
Can I come at this from a different side though for a second? Because
do it.
I think that we have to be patient with people too, though, because there is a reality in that the average person in the pews doesn't understand what this term means, right?
Which is what I said. Like the people pushing this are the bad ones.
But you know what? What's going to happen is like they're going to hear about this term Christian nationalism, taking what you said, Vince, about people who are otherized and that kind of thing. The average Christian in the pew who's maybe in a circle where there's a lot of embrace of Christian nationalist theology, you know, Seven Mountain Dominionism kind of thing, like we got to take all the hills of culture, we got to really, you know, all this kind of stuff, which has a very specific theology behind it that is being driven by a lot of forces and is bought into by a lot of organizations, Christian parachurch organizations and Christian church organizations that believe in that theology and are pushing it. The average person in the church might just run in those circles because they're just trying to be a good Christian. You know, like they don't know. They haven't dug into it. They don't know all that theology is behind it. And so then what happens is they hear this term Christian nationalist either from their pastor quoting folks, or they hear it online, they see it on Twitter, they hear it on NPR, whatever. And they're like, well, this other person is calling folks around me that I trust, who as far as I see, trying to just pursue Jesus and do right, you know, in this nation. And they're getting called Christian nationalists. Well, whatever, you know, whatever. If all these people are being called Christian nationalists, then sure, I'm a Christian nationalist. Like, and so I think people can unknowingly stumble into it because to actually try to explain this to somebody, to Philip's point, like if you had somebody come up and be like, well, yo, what's to actually go back and unpack the theology, to unpack, you know, the American, like there's actually a lot for the average person to actually have to understand, to even start to see like, oh, this is a movement. This is, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Being gracious with people is absolutely what we should do.
Yeah.
But I have just a tiny, just like a couple of my fingers pushing back.
Okay.
Tiny bit.
Do it.
I'm gonna just keep it a stack. Almost every person has a phone in their pocket. So I understand that there are bad sources, news and sources, just like you said, Phil. There are bad sources, there are good sources. But all of those sources are accessible very easily and very quickly. So if a person says, well, I don't know what that is, you can dispel that within a few minutes. Now,
Look it up.
how you dispel that, as far as the
Yeah.
sources that you seek or that you reach out to, that you read, that you consume, that can either embolden what you're thinking or at least drop the question, all right, they're talking about this in a positive way, but what I've read or what I've researched doesn't acknowledge that. And so it at least allows the question or at least the pondering of what's being said. So if a person stumbles in that, I get that and I'm not denying it. I'm not pushing back on that part.
Yeah.
But I am saying there is a level of responsibility and access to information that I think is kind of required.
I mean, that's true, and I think that's a really good point and something worth acknowledging. I think the struggle with it is that a lot of people will not get that far. Within a culture of uniformity, within the way that stereotypes function, you're in your small group leader is chatting, before Bible study about blah blah blah, whoop de whoop, Christian
Yeah.
nationalism. This is what people are calling me, and I'm for it. In that moment, you're hanging out with your, Bible study homies or whatever.
Yeah.
You're not like, oh man, I'll check this guy. Let me
Let me look
pull up
this
the
up.
Google. Let me look that up. Make sure that's not unbiblical. Let me be a Berean. You're like, oh yeah, like I trust this guy, like Christian. Like sure, that sounds good. Before the
that's
nation,
why.
this guy's for like he's saying it's good. Like okay, then these other people, it's going to be characterized in a certain way. Oh, these other people are saying that. Oh, there's just a no, and then the stereotype of there's just the newest label for what people are angry at Christians about. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
slips into a bucket in their mind that they already have for this category. And so that's how it easily becomes a label I just own. Okay, fine. I'll put it on a t-shirt now because, you call me that. I'll just be a Jesus freak. Okay, whatever.
Well, and that is why I think like that's not even a thing that like, oh, I agree, I disagree. Like, yes, like that's absolutely probably the reality, unfortunately, of many folks, which is why I think it's important. Not that the substance in us are so great and important, but like that's why I think it's important that we're saying this. Because if they just hear Christian nationalism is bad from sources that are other in their head, like the NPR or even like because in their mind, what they're being fed by the culture war folks, the people who are profiteering off of all this chaos, is that like the extremists on the other side are coming for you. But if like as their brothers and sisters, we speak up and go, hey, like there are real concerns. Like I very much sympathize with Vince, especially when it's like like people who I know. It's like you're friends with me. I don't agree with you unless you genuinely think that like I secretly hate Jesus.
Yeah.
It'd be great if like we genuinely engaged on some of these things. But like I think it is important for us to, with love, with tenderness, with thankfulness, engage these things so that in their minds, hopefully, over time, like relationships change minds. I think we've talked about that on the show.
That's
But
right.
I mean, both anecdotally, but like actual science, like the data is that relationships is the biggest thing that changes minds. It's not arguments. Like somebody could read an article on their phone, but if it is other and outside, like I know people personally who believe crazy things. And that's because something that on their side shared it or put it out.
Yeah.
And literally, like, it would take an extreme amount of right in their face facts to change their mind. And it might not even, like, the way we're made, like, we're very prideful creatures. Like, if you think a thing, like, you're going to dig in. But if I go, okay, you're a Christian nationalism, I take my identity as a Christian very seriously. Let's talk and kind of work through some of these things and kind of unpack. I think that really is the way. And I'm speaking to myself sometimes. Like I know sometimes I need to cool down, breathe a little bit, and just be like, okay. And especially if someone's genuinely giving you an opening, like I can't be too angry at their immaturity or foolishness in this area because, like, I'm sure I'm an idiot about loads of things, and like God is patient with me, so I don't want to be in the culture war and just be like, oh, like these people, like,
Mhm.
and that's hard. That's
Yeah.
something we got to do.
And I relate to the point that Trevor made because, like, in the environment that we all met, I got real involved and real saturated, and I wasn't the guy to immediately, at least, not to say I never did, but I didn't immediately pull out my phone and say, I don't believe you. I'm gonna figure it out myself. Because when I really started to get involved, like I'm speaking, if you go back to our episodes, I speak very differently about CRT. I speak very differently about institutional or systemic racism. I speak very differently about these topics that we've covered today. But in those environments, and I've made, like you said, Phil, I've made relationships with people, and I believe that these people are very intelligent and very well studied. So it's almost like, yo, why do I need to go to the other resources? Because
Sure.
I don't have just somebody I trust. I have somebody who is knowledgeable,
Mhm.
who's telling me these things.
Mhm.
And so then I conform to those ideas or ideologies. And so I guess if nothing else, it is an encouragement to remind all of us that regardless of how informed we are all fallible, and we can sound very knowledgeable about bad stuff, about bad ideas.
Mm.
Hitler was super articulate in Nazism and his understanding of Jews. He was very wrong, but he could, I mean, he roused the crowd. We've heard and seen those speeches. So it's like, just because somebody's articulate, just because somebody seems knowledgeable, just because somebody seems well grounded, it's not to say that they're untrustworthy, but it is also to acknowledge their humanity and saying, okay, I believe, and I don't mind not believing, or I don't mind believing, but I could do some research on my own so I can be informed if I'm going to have a conversation with someone else. And it's just an encouragement for that.
This is good.
When we talked about all these topics, we weren't necessarily trying to loop them all together, but this goes very nicely into our final topic here. This was something that I've been thinking about a lot lately because I am on social media. On social media, things are skewed.
Mm.
The thing that propels social media is engagement and attention.
Mhm.
And the way we work as creatures is the things that elicit the strongest emotions get the most attention.
Oh, they're
And the
fighting
things
over
that,
there.
yeah, the things that get the most
World
attention
Star.
get the most ad dollars. They get the most ad dollars, keeps them promoted and in front of everybody's faces. And that those bad feelings that you feel when you see them will make you want to engage. And then they're like, oh, like this is a big conversation that everybody's so interested in. It's like, well, there's probably a lot of bad aspects of that. But just thinking about the whole phenomenon of when and how to respond to some of these folks who purport to be Christians, just saying the wildest things. Christians and non-Christians, really. Just thinking about how our social media interaction engages with Proverbs 26. So Proverbs 26, 4 and 5 from the NIV. Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you will be just like him, or you yourself will be just like him. Answer a fool according to his folly, or he will be wise in his own eyes. So that quote unquote good Christian guy or gal who has been suckered in by Christian nationalism, like, answer them according to their folly, or else they'll be wise in their own eyes. But then you also have the people who are like belligerent and toxic that you don't want to engage. Like, how do we discern the answer a fool according to his folly? Do not answer a fool according to his folly. When you see in real time, like, people I know follow these accounts saying this wicked, foolish, destructive nonsense, and when do I not? When and how do I engage, and when and how do I not engage?
Yeah.
And that's something I think about on a daily basis.
What comes to my mind is your heart disposition before responding. Because if you are responding in a way that seeks to match or outdo the foolishness of the person who's made a post or a comment, then you're probably in the realm where you should not answer that person in their folly.
You yourself would be
But
just like him.
exactly. But if your heart disposition is one to like, yo, I actually care about this person, or I actually care about this topic, and you know, and I know that I'm going to do it in a way that seeks to shed some light, bring some wisdom onto this topic or this conversation peacefully, then I think that that's the time where you can pursue that answer or engage in that conversation. But I think it starts with the person's heart disposition of like, why are you responding? What are you saying it for? And what is the energy that's driving that response?
Yeah. I almost feel like there could be two different ways to read this set of verses, especially in the context, right? There's a lot of stuff around fools all through verses 1 through 12. There's two ways to read it. There's either you can't win when you interact with fools. Like you're interacting with fools, and so you can't win. Like either way, like you either don't answer them, and then they're just going to think they're right, or you do, and they're going to be. So that's one way to read it. That would be the more pessimistic way. And honestly, looking at the surrounding verses, whoever sends a message by the hands of a fool cuts off his own feet and drinks violence. There's all of this stuff about like here's one, verse 10, like an archer who wounds everyone is one who hires a passing fool or drunkard. So like the guy who shoots both his troops and the other troops is this dude. So
He just closes his eyes, cocks it back, and lets it fly.
Exactly. And so that's in the direct immediate context of this verse. So it could be a pessimistic reading could be you can't win. An optimistic reading would be you have to be wise to discern, right? So like it's giving contradictory advice, but the point being that it's proverbial, right? It's the whole point of it is not to be a black and white law, but it's something for the wise to be able to discern and figure out what okay, is this person the kind of person who can receive and not be wise in his own eyes? Or is this a pointless conversation and now I'm just a fool for entering into it?
Yeah. I have a question. So how does one determine what is foolish? Because if a person who like let's go to our Christian nationalism topic. A person who's posting that who genuinely believes it, they don't believe that they're being foolish. They believe that they're sharing truth. They believe that they're trying to allow individuals to know something that they believe is the way to walk as a Christian in this nation. And then we're on this side looking like, yo, this is wild. And so how does one determine what's foolish?
Well, I mean, one answer would be the book of Proverbs is a great primer on that. You know what's foolish by what's
discernment.
wise.
Yeah.
Well, discernment, and also in contrast to wisdom. Wisdom is humble, right? James talks about the way of wisdom, right? Being peaceable, gentle. Wisdom is like Christ, right? Wisdom is loving. Like there's a lot of things about wisdom. So like foolishness would be its opposite, right? And not just things that don't accord with truth, right? It's not about just being wrong, but it's the way in which it approaches it. I think about verse 12 in this same chapter, Proverbs 26. Do you see a man who's wise in his own eyes? I mean, if you're scrolling any social media, you do. There is more hope for a fool than for him. And that after saying stuff like one who binds the stone in the sling is one who gives honor to a fool. You accidentally tied the stone to the sling so hard, now when you try to sling it, it's just going to spin around and hit you in the face. It's saying all this stuff about how dangerous it is to interact with fools. And then it says, and like the capstone verse of this whole section is, yeah, but if you see somebody who's wise in their own eyes, there's more hope for a fool than for that guy.
So tread lightly.
So be teachable, that's
right, exactly.
And that's a constant admonishment in all of it. So I think that's one way that you recognize foolishness, and hard foolishness that you shouldn't answer is somebody who's just not teachable.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, something that when it comes to when to engage, when not to engage, how to engage, when I do decide to engage, one of the things I always try to keep it about is like, and we do this here on the substance, is the principles, the propositions. Like, what are we talking about? There's so many people who are building their platforms on taking shots at people outside their camp versus like saying anything. Like, you even look like politically, like we just had like a lot of elections here locally. I'm sure you guys probably have had elections in your area. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the common behavior that I see is not, here is clearly where we stand on these issues and we would like your support. A lot of what I see is like, these other guys are bad.
Yeah.
So like when I try to engage, I really do try to get at the heart of it. Like, if somebody is making a wild and foolish and unfounded claim, I try to ask questions or shine a light on the reality. It's like, oh, like, how do you see that in light of this? Not, oh, like, what a big idiot this person is.
Mm.
Like, and I very much feel the pull of like, let me slam dunk on this idiot. But like, that is not peaceable. That is not humble. That's not teachable.
Yeah.
So that's
And that can be foolish.
that's a lot of what
Dude.
I try to do. But I mean, a lot of what I've done lately is just not engage. My social media has been family and books and movies. I am trying to stay out of unfruitful conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I try to keep it offline, like relational, close,
Yeah.
you know. Online,
I texted some of these people.
Yeah.
I know some of these people who are out here wilding. I've texted some of them
Yeah.
personally going, hey, like, I don't understand what you're doing.
and that actually takes you into an avenue where sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes productive conversation can come of that, and maybe like it brings your relationship a little bit closer, right? Like renews relationships and things like that as well. Online, you know, if it's some stranger and if they're actually willing to engage, there's still a lot of relational distance that you have to put in time to close to be able to have that productive conversation,
Mhm.
you know, still all online. And so, you know, gauging whether that is worth that person's time or your time, right? Because we have all our own communities to engage with.
Whew.
It's challenging, but I would say
Yeah.
too, like this entire chapter, holy cow, is like a primer on how to engage in social media. We could like almost do an entire episode on stuff like, you know, whoever
I like to
meddles in
see
a
Alan
quarrel,
Noble's book on this.
whoever meddles in a quarrel not his own is like one who takes a passing dog by the ears. That's great for social media.
Yeah, a stray dog. You want to be grabbing those whenever you see them out in the street, right?
Right.
Unless you're
Yeah,
not
and I
getting
think
rabies.
one of the biggest thing to just piggyback off your comment of being relational, one of the best questions that I've used in order to better understand people is help me understand what
Mhm.
you're trying to say, or help me better understand the thought behind that. And seeking to engage in that way, because what I'm saying is, okay, I believe I misunderstand, or it's possible that I misunderstand. So help me better understand what you're talking about. And then that does put, I don't know if there's a proper term, but it does put a little fire under their feet to be able to say, okay, now you have to stop with the rhetoric and actually explain what you're
Mhm.
talking about. And so it definitely puts them in a spot to say, do I actually understand this in order to be able to articulate it? But it also, if they do understand it, then it allows me to get a better understanding of kind of how the wheels are turning. And then if I think that they're saying something poorly or believing something poorly, or whatever, then now that I'm getting into the details of it, then we can actually start to have a dynamic conversation about those individual parts.
Yeah, a lot of those harmful, crazy, unfounded, wild belief systems and rhetoric thrives in an echo chamber, right?
Sure.
So if you are personally not on board, but you're like, I care about you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here, I'm humble, I'm teachable, I'm not your enemy, and I'm coming alongside you. Help me understand. How do you understand that in light of these other things? Especially if
Mm-hmm.
we're if we all are claiming to be in the spiritual family of God, like
Mhm.
how do we square these things? Not that we're going to agree on everything, but if
Right.
someone out there is saying wild stuff, not aggressively like prove it, but like going like, oh
Mhm.
hey, like, are you saying this? Oh, you are saying that. Oh, like, well, how does that jive with like
Mhm. All
the
of these other things. Yeah.
totality of what we're called to be? And
Yeah.
I found that is almost impossible to do on social media.
Yeah. So hey, listen or read, because I know you can listen to books now. Proverbs 26, and take that as an assessment of how you should engage in regular conversations and online.
Anyway, do we have a book pitch to IVP there? We have the substance Proverbs 26 book there.
Proverbs 26, a primer for social media.
Yeah.
In stores,
Hey.
2028.
Wow,
Dang. Jeez
that's a long
Louise.
time.
We got to get people
Okay.
interested in it first.
We're on bi-weekly episodes and we're really busy, so that's fair.
Come on, man. 2023 is not that far away. We haven't even written this thing yet.
Right. All right, fellas. Shout outs.
Any final thoughts before the shout outs? Or we
Proverbs 27:1. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you don't know what a day may bring.
Yeah, so Trevor's out here talking about 6 years from now. 27 shutting him down.
Whatever.
Shout outs.
Let's get to it. I'll start it out.
Do it.
So this is in the same way that our Thanksgiving episode is not in the month of November. My shout out is not in the month of December, but we gonna shout it out anyways. So I'm shouting out a good homie of mine as well as a guest of the substance, Show Baraka. He had 2 years ago, he had a freestyle that he did, All I Want for Christmas. And it is not, it has nothing to do with Mariah Carey. Not at all. It is going to be refreshing. It's very different. And I mean, he went absolutely bonkers on that track. He killed it 100%. So if you have the time, it does not have to be Christmas season for you to enjoy this track. So Show Baraka, that's SHOBARAKA, All I Want for Christmas freestyle.
Man, you're already getting into Christmas over there, Vince?
It just kind of popped up on my feed, and it was a banger. So I was like, you know what? Forget it. It don't need to be Christmas. I'm playing. This is on repeat.
All right. Fun.
So my substance shout out this week is a movie that I watched for the first time probably about a year and a half or so ago. Watched the movie back in the day, didn't love it, but was revisiting it for this podcast. And man, it's dark, it's complex, it's very human. It deals with some of the caricatures, some of the stereotypes of Southern religion, but really a lot of God-haunted people, some more virtuous, I guess, in a way than others, but all of them very flawed. I found it to be much more ultimately affirming. There is a lot of darkness. Flannery O'Connor and the filmmaker, this movie, John Huston, they did not give you a lot of lightness, but if you have an eye to see and to look for it, I really found it there on my recent viewings of it. So Wise Blood, John Huston's 1979 film. If listeners are interested in seeing it, I believe it's currently playing on HBO Max or the Criterion channel. So certainly not one for everybody, but one that whenever I get turned around on something, I always want to give it a shout out. So 1979's
Nice.
Wise Blood.
I'll have to, will we have to watch the movie before we check out the episode if we just want to hear you, Phil?
Not at all.
Sweet, dude. I'll probably be taking that path. But I'm excited. Sweet. For my shout out, there's so much good stuff, and sometimes it feels like there's so much of it that even stuff that's relatively new seems old. But when stuff's really good, it's not old. You know what I mean? And so this is actually just a book from 2021. But for whatever reason in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, that book came out seems like a while ago, but no, like it's really fresh.
That's
It's
because
really
700
relevant.
books have come out since then.
It's true, but
Because the content machine is insane.
it is that. But in 2021, Duke Kwon and Gregory Thompson put out a book
Oh yeah.
called Reparations, Christian Case for something and repair. But anyway, I'm listening through it right now, and the introduction, chapter 1, chapter 2, succinct descriptions of the problem of racism in America, how it functions, what is race, all like questions that people need answers to, like people are asking, people are talking about, people are trying to understand. And here you have a book where you can pick it up, and in the first couple chapters, you've got Christian men who are well studied providing succinct, well researched, true, I might say, and very easily understandable answers to a lot of these questions.
A Christian call to repentance and repair.
A Christian call to repentance and repair. That was the other R. Thank you. And whatever you think about reparations, if you want to understand the issue and especially the spiritual side of the issues of race in America, well, I highly recommend picking up this book.
Yeah.
Because even if you get no further than I've gotten so far, which is the introduction, chapter 1, chapter 2, the information, the quality of the information, and the way that they summarize it is well worth your time. You will be enriched. So I'm going to keep trucking it on that. I might bring that up in future episodes as well, but very highly recommend that resource, Reparations by Duke Kwon and Gregory Thompson.
Yeah, I was talking to him last year. We could maybe we still do we do reparations? We talked about
We talked about it briefly.
We talked about it on the
topic toss-up.
I think it was a
TTU.
toss-up.
Okay, yeah, no, because I'd still happily hit that on a Reflex, and
Yeah, there's
Duke
a
was
lot
not
there.
unwilling to come on the show. I'm sure they wouldn't mind getting a bump a year later. Like, you do a ton of press when you first have it, but she'd be like, "Oh, great!" Like, okay, so yeah, look out for that maybe in the future.
Man, so that's our omnibus episode. We got lots of topics for you to enjoy. It's a topic toss-up.
Yeah, it's a little bit longer. We're making up since it's been since April since we had our last one. But if you're a fan of the topic toss-up, you want these shows to continue. One of the ways that you can help us as we seek to create, hopefully, evergreen, regular content now bi-weekly, we'll see what the future holds, is to become a Substance supporter at the Anchor link. You can find that in the show notes or on the website. You can join us at $5 or $10 a month. We are not one of the largest shows in the religion and spirituality section. We know each of our supporters by name. We always appreciate it. So if that's something you're able to join, you want to join the Substance team and say, hey, like, I like what those guys do. I want to help them and encourage them and make sure that they do it for a while going forward. You can do that in the link there. Or if monthly support is not something you're able or interested to do, you just want to throw us something here or there, you can shoot us a couple bucks at Cash App, or you can shoot us a couple bucks on Cash App at $the Substance Pod. Every now and then you're like, hey, like, I listened to an episode, I really like that episode, I'm going to shoot them $5, whatever it looks like there. We always appreciate folks who do that as well. We working on giveaways, hopefully maybe some merch coming up in the future here. But anything that we do as we go forward with the subs. Actually, we just renewed the lease on the old website there. So thank you, listeners, everybody who supported us for that. Yeah, that's how we're growing. So if that's something you're able to do, we thank you for that.
Visit us at thesubstancepod.com. There you're going to find our socials on the homepage on the upper right corner. Follow us on those, as well as you will be able to find our episodes. You can listen to this episode or any other episodes that we've done. We've done a lot of great topics and had a lot of great guests. So if you find yourself wanting to find biblical, thoughtful, and human conversations, definitely visit our website for that. Leave us a comment under the comments section. It's not active on our YouTube, but it is active on our website. So we'd love to know what you're thinking, how you're feeling about certain aspects of the content, whether you agree or disagree. We want to hear from you. And we do have the Blessed playlist. That is a playlist that we have from Spotify. It is just the things that we've shouted out, or just the things that we like. So definitely take some time to listen to those things. Obviously, there's going to be an explicit warning for some of the songs. If that's not something that you jam, absolutely avoid those, but enjoy everything else on thesubstancepod.com.
Oh, what's that sound? That's someone dialing our phone number, 913-703-3883. And why would they be doing that? Because it's the year of the voicemail. It's 2022. You can partake of the year of the voicemail as well. Dial 913-703-3883. There you'll have 3 minutes. You can leave your thoughts, your testimonials, your ideas, and we will be on the other end of the line later at a different time, listening to it. And if we really like it, it could end up on the show. So give us a call.
Yes, sir.
You can also email us at thesubstancepod@gmail.com. And we read those. We love to get mail from our listeners, from you. Thanks for coming here and listening to us today. I'm one of your 3 hosts, Trevor.
And I'm Vincent.
And I'm Philip.
Saying we will see you in a couple weeks
on The Substance.
And we go.
Thankfullness.
Yeah. Give me a second. I had an intro to this.
And then my sweet vamping.
Take a vamping
made me forget.
And I also took a nap this afternoon. So anyway,